Welcome back, Leveling Up. Man, this is such a wonderful experience. Today, we're going to be having some healing conversations with some of my very good friends. They are co-authors of the Heal to Be Healed book, and you're going to hear a little bit more about what is going on in their life, get to know them a little bit more, and we're going to help you understand what this movement is all about, all the different things that come into using your story to heal. I think this is such a wonderful topic. We're going to talk a little bit about how blame and responsibility are two drastically different things. We'll talk a little bit about grief, and we'll hit healing in a holistic way. So grateful to have all of you guys on today. Let's first introduce my good buddy, M. Curtis McCoy. Now, he has been someone that I absolutely love from Toastmasters. I'm going to give him a moment to share a little bit about himself and to take us to that next level to understand a little bit more what his part in this whole project is. So yeah, go ahead, Curtis, tell us about yourself.
Brigham, man, it's good to be on your show again. Always nice to you got an incredible podcast.
Oh,
the thing that we're doing with the book, I love that Tony invited me to write the introduction to it, but we've all gone through junk that sucks in our life. And the difference between, I actually said this on a song. There's a band that used my quote in a song. It says the difference between winners and losers is losers use their past as an excuse. Winners use their past as a reason to become something better. And that's something when I wrote the introduction to this book, I didn't talk about my own story, as far as abuse or the stuff that I've gone through. Yeah. Because everybody in here has got this crazy traumatic stuff. So I want you to read this book, and as you're reading it, listen to the stories, listen to the healing, listen to what you can take out of the message, not just a story, a sad story about what somebody went through. Look at where they're at now. And if you're in a struggle, some kind of struggle situation, figure out how to follow that example and become somebody that's inspiring to others as well.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. I'm so stoked to have all of you guys on today, and welcome back to the show. Another person that's been on the show before, we've got my buddy Krista Fee. Go ahead, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and why this is such an important project.
This is a hugely important project because when we tell our stories about the traumas and the experiences and all the hurt and the things that we've gone through, for so many of us that are a long way through in our healing journey, it doesn't resonate with us the same way that it used to, right? So we want to talk about power and freedom and hope and who we are now. And that's not really defined by our past experiences anymore. But we know that the way to touch all of you out there is to show you that we've been there too, to show you that we're going through the same things, and that there is something completely different on the other side than right now you think is possible.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Now, one of the things I love about you is you have such a great essence of what it is that you do. You are always helping these first responders in empowering them to not just be their very best, but to live their very best life. And I appreciate you being on the podcast again.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Now let's go to Tawny Lee. This is a book that was brought to my attention because of her. I was able to connect with her last year when I was one of her speakers. So let's introduce her. Go ahead, Tawny, share a little bit about your background.
Well, I love what everybody has said already. And our past does not define who we are, but it has brought us to where we are. And then it is our choice whether we want to stay stuck as a victim or we want to move forward and be victorious. And by doing that, can we help others and empower them to begin to thrive in life as well? And that's part of the subtitle. It's time to thrive.
Absolutely. Well, I'm so stoked to have you on today as well. Let's welcome to the stage, Dr. Randy Lockhart. You were here last week. Tell us a little bit about what this project means for you.
Well, Brigham, thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of your program again. It means a lot to me because I deal with a lot of people before I got hurt. And now that I've been hurt, it gives me an even deeper perspective into dealing with folks. So this has been a very eye-opening thing for me. Plus, it's allowing me to work with families on how to support people who have gone through some traumatic issues themselves. So thank you for allowing me to be a part of this. And Tony, thank you for allowing me to be a part of your book.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to bring all of you guys up here. We're going to get into what healing conversations are all about. Let's first start with Curtis. I know this is such a broad topic, but talk to us about what healing conversations are for you and why it matters.
I don't share a whole lot about the way that I grew up, as far as the abuse and that kind of stuff anymore. But when I started out, one of the huge things with the healing conference, Tony had me come up and speak about my dad as a kid beating on me, had me a 357 pistol. After he'd been beating on me for hours, knocked me on the floor, slapped the pistol closed and put it on the counter, told me to do the world a favor. When I originally started speaking, I said that at probably 50 different events, telling about all these, all the negative stuff, the struggles and the trauma and all that. Yeah. But it's cool seeing, just like me, when you hear me now speak on Tony stages, it is, I typically don't even mention any of that. It's all about where I'm going, and not even focus towards me, but I'm trying to focus on the audience, how I may use some of my past experience, thinking of that as I'm talking to that target listener in the audience there. But it just helps so much to be able to get out there, share your story, have somebody listen, especially an event or in a book like this, get out and start sharing what's going on. And I would love to invite you guys. I'm sure Tony will be doing more of these books, but if you read a book where an author has been in it multiple times, look at where they started, that first chapter that they wrote, and then the next book and the next book and the next book. And it's amazing to see that journey of healing and growth, and somebody going from poor me to how can I help others.
Beautiful. Well, Tani, let's go to you for a second. Tell us about this process. This is the second book in this series. You are going to do another one after that, but I think this is wonderful to see people's progress through these healing conversations. And thanks again, Curtis, for bringing that up. Go ahead, Tani.
Thank you, Curtis. I love that you brought that up, because it's true, because there's a few of them that have come back and they're in the book for the second time. And this book all started just to give my speakers an ability to share their stories, is how it started. And then just bringing in other people. But like Anna Marie, to hear her story as an immigrant this time is totally different from the first one. Meg, the same thing. Krista, the same thing. And so, it is. It's amazing. Amazing.
I love it. Now we've got Dr. Randy and we've got Krista as well. What is your take on this whole experience, and why is it so important for people to not just have these healing conversations about themselves, but to find people that are hurting, that are suffering from grief and all these different things, and to equip them? Because this is kind of what Curtis was talking about. You want to equip people so they can get better. They want to see what healing looks like, not just what the hurt looks like. So Krista, we'll start with you, then we'll go to Randy.
Evil thrives in silence. So many of us have experienced the things we're afraid to have conversations openly about: sexual assault, sexual abuse, domestic violence, all of these things that they happen in the darkness, they happen in the silence. So when we get strong enough to use our voices, we give others permission to begin to use their voices too. I mean, there's been tons of scientific research on the permission that's granted by one person leading, right? In a crowd, one person has to break the ice. They have to move forward and do something. And that's what we're here for. We're here to give permission, to give that little push that those that are afraid to break out of the crowd need.
Beautiful. Thank you. Sorry for the distracted thing. My little tap button to bring people back up just disappeared. So I was like, oh, awesome. That's how it goes sometimes. Anytime we are trying to deal with trauma, if we focus only on what the hurt is, I feel like a lot of times we get stuck in those situations. And what I'm hearing from this is we want to figure out, what do we need to do, and what's that core desire to get to that next level? How does healing look? Not just what does the wound feel like? And anytime we have these types of conversations, it's all about making sure, what's the end result that we're going for? And after you've transformed your life, you've been able to heal, you've been able to see other people heal, you can start to follow those same patterns. I think this is so essential. Now, I want to bring up Dr. Randy as well. And thank you so much, Krista, for sharing your insights there. Tell us, Randy, what is your take on this? I want to hear a little bit more about what this means for you to have a healing conversation.
Well, I want to piggyback off of what Krista said, because there's a lot of stuff that starts on the inside, and the healing actually starts on the inside from my perspective. Mm-hmm. I had to convince myself that I was going to get better. And by doing that, I also reached out to my faith, and then my family being there and still being there helped support me, because it's been 3 years ago this coming Friday, and I still backslide a lot, and I still have to fight to maintain my mental desire to improve. So it starts on the inside, and every day, constantly throughout the day, I have to continuously remind myself, and then remind people around me that, don't come and show me sympathy, show me strength, help me, give me something to cling to. And that's what I want to be able to also in the next phase, is be able to work with families and support people on how can you help someone maintain their vision and their sight, and not allow the evil inside to gain control, because it certainly will.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you so much for bringing this up. Now we have a great framework to go off of, a few different ways to think about what healing conversations are. I'm going to bring everybody back out here. Now we've got Krista and Tani, M. Curtis McCoy, Dr. Randy. All of you guys have diverse experiences, diverse backgrounds. Tell me a little bit. We'll start with you, Randy. What is it about blame versus responsibility that we need to understand from your perspective?
Well, one of the things that I had to do, Brigham, is I had to forgive the person who caused my injury. Mm-hmm. And that was difficult. That was one of the hardest things I ever did. And I've not ever had the opportunity to do it to his face, but in my own heart, I have. And so I had to get all of that out of the way to be able to stay focused on what I need to do and where I need to go. And so I also forgive myself for allowing myself to get sucked into some of the negativity. And I have to get rid of that woe is me and that narcissistic mindset of, it is not about me. It's about helping others through what I'm able to do, what I'm able to show. So, that's finding that inner strength is critical.
That's so important. Now, when we're talking about blame and responsibility, Curtis, I feel like you've got such a great background on this. Would you be willing to share in business? Let's talk about this just for a second. Sometimes you have an unhealthy business. Sometimes you have things that are not working. And instead of getting in that blame mentality of saying, oh, this is what's wrong with it, you're to blame and pointing fingers, how do you find who's responsible and how do you take responsibility yourself?
And that's a rough conversation. So as a lot of you know, I owned a cosmetic medical laser clinic, a pharmaceutical company, Christian clothing company, had a telecom business with over 250,000 customers a month, multiple retail stores. So I've done a lot as far as the management side of that goes. Mm-hmm. But I'll give you an example of how I started out. I had one little retail store. I was working 80 to 112 hours a week, just absolutely gassed, 6.5 days a week from the moment my eyes open until I closed. And
lost you for a second. Sorry. You said you're absolutely gassed, and what was that?
But I had my finger in every section of the pie. There was nothing that I did not micromanage down to the ridiculous detail, and the business was limited growing. Like I said, 80 to 112 hours a week, and I was capped, could not do anymore. So I brought on this high school kid named Dylan, real sharp little guy that just, I think it was his first job. He come in, but just a great personality, loved people, and super tech whiz, just genius, smart kid. He's actually a nuclear sub engineer now for the Navy.
Whoa, okay.
But real sharp kid. And so I stressed trying to figure out how do I'm going to die here of the stress that I got going on. So I finally decided to take a day off. So stressed. Hopped on a motorcycle, rode ridiculously over the speed limit from here to New Mexico. T-shirt, no spare anything. And rode over to Durango and then Aztec, New Mexico. And when I called in for the evening, I'm thinking, okay, the store has probably been set on fire, or there's probably a trade wreck. I probably just lost my business for this day off. I got back, and he had our highest sales day in history to that point. And so Bill ended up running one of the stores. We started opening additional stores, but I really learned a lot that it was a good thing to take that, to delegate responsibility and allow people to do what they are great at. So if somebody's an expert, you cannot, in your business, you cannot be an expert in every single thing. So hire people that are smarter than you, people that are better than you, and let them take the reins on the stuff that they're good at.
Beautiful. Delegation is so important. And then finding out who's actually responsible, who is the one that when you pass the buck, he's the one that actually takes it. Thank you for that wonderful example. Tani, I would love to hear your take on grief and responsibility, blame, all these different ideas. But first, blame versus responsibility. Go ahead and talk to us about what that means for you.
Well, as most everyone knows, I did my recovery by the use of 12 steps as being married to a sex addict. So the 12 steps were huge for me. And the very first step is that we have to admit to God and to ourselves that we have become completely powerless. In other words, I have no control over anyone, but I do have control over what I do, what I choose, and how I react to that or react to someone. So it lies completely on me. I was not to blame for someone else's actions, what they did, because there was nothing I could have done, not did, whatever. They were going to do what they were going to do. But I had to seek responsibility for myself. Okay, am I going to be a victim forever, or am I going to choose to move forward and become a valor? And step 12 is you take what you have learned and you help others. You just keep moving forward. So everything that we've talked about is actually a step from 1 to 12. It really is. The grief, all of that. And so I had to make a choice. I started at the age 5. I wasn't going to be a victim for what happened to me. I was going to enjoy life, right? And I've been that way my whole entire life. There are times I want to just like, no thanks. Let me just stay in my pity box for a while. But it's so uncomfortable. It's so unhealthy. And I have had so many health issues from the trauma and the anxiety and all of that kind of stuff like that, that I just don't want that anymore. So I choose to move forward. I can blame people. That's what an unhealthy person does, or I can accept the responsibility. And that is what a healthy person does. And then I move forward to help others, like Healing Hearts, the Healing Conference, Healed to be Healed, the books, Healing Broken Women, all of that. I want to share with other people what I went through, how I was able to move forward, the gifts God has given me. And now I am thriving in life. I have bad days, but for the most part, I'm thriving in life. And that's my choice. That's what I want to do. And now I want to help others do the same thing.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing your take on how you can actually grasp responsibility when things feel like they're sand between your fingers. We often have that opportunity to blame, but we get to choose responsibility. Such a great choice. Krista, I'd love to hear your take on this really quick. Blame versus responsibility.
Ooh, I love this conversation. This one gets me in trouble a lot because I work in huge trauma circles, right? So there's a lot of people in that environment that truly love the victim mentality. They truly get something from remaining in that victim place. And when we say publicly, what happened to you was not your fault, but healing is your responsibility, people will get so mad. But the truth of it is, the moment that you realize that you decide who you are, you decide what you want to put out into the world today, that's where you have power. When you realize that you can be a victim, or you can be a survivor that was victimized, or you can be the hero of your own story, or you can just reject the story altogether and decide who you want to be today. And none of that matters anymore.
This is such a great conversation. If we stay in the victim mentality, oh, this happened to me, that disempowers us in so many ways. But if we take responsibility, even though it was not our fault, we say, you know what? I'm wholly responsible for this. I am going to do something based on all this trauma that happened to me. I'm going to do something with my life anyway. I'm going to win anyway. Had a really good friend of mine who's just a brilliant speaker. He talks about this idea of winning anyway. He went all the way through Toastmasters, got right to the end, and he didn't win. And he's like, wait a second. I didn't win according to the judges, but I'm going to win anyway because he took that experience and had it become a way that he built his life and his business. I think this is such a key point to make sure that we are taking responsibility, not for what happens just to us, but to say, you know what, this is going to happen through me. And then I'm going to use that as fuel, that pain as fuel to go do something good with all of that challenge. Now, we just had my good buddy Travis McGinnis hop on. I'm going to introduce him because I love this man.
Oh,
He's
yes.
one of our fellow authors. I'm going to introduce him. Travis, tell us a little bit about your background really quick. You've got like 1 minute. Tell us who you are. And I know you're going to be on again in the near future, but tell us a little bit about what your take is on healing conversations. Oh, 1 second. I'm going to unmute you first. Go ahead, Travis.
Thanks. A lot of my healing conversations are spiritual ones. I guess I've been on a long spiritual journey ever since I was a teenager, coming from, a background of traumatic experiences and just maybe lack of direction and confusion. A lot of, I think what most human beings go through as they develop and try to figure out who they are and understand, the hurts that can happen in this world, the things they don't realize they're picking up. But yeah, by the grace of God, I feel like I walk in a light that of truth and love that I've been able to use to overcome those dark places. And now as an adult, I look back on those things. And when I was younger, I used to be confused as to why I had to ever endure that kind of suffering and darkness and confusion. But now I see it as a way to give back and save others. Because now that I'm familiar with those dark places, I can authentically meet people where they're at. And I can write to those places and those areas that I think people are uncomfortable talking about, especially when they haven't experienced it or are just too afraid to face it themselves.
Such a great point. A lot of times we have to go through those traumas to have that experience. And sometimes we get to utilize mentors or books and say, you know what, I'm going to do that trauma by proxy. I don't have to get divorced to be able to say, oh, wow, these were some of the patterns that led to that. I'm going to do my best to make sure that I'm giving 100% to my marriage. Or you can think of all the different ways that you can learn from mentors and make it mean something. Now, I know Curtis has to leave really quick, so I want to give him one more opportunity to share a little bit of what his take on grief is, and then we'll let him head out because I know he's got another appointment. But tell us really quick, Curtis, what is your take on grief? And then you can kind of summarize for us how we can find you online.
Sounds good, man. So people often feel guilty about grief. Feel like, whether that's abuse or trauma, or you've had sexual abuse or molested or beat on as a kid or whatever. And I went through that myself. Didn't have any sexual stuff, but was not in a good situation growing up. And I spent a lot of time talking about, you're created in the image of the God that created the entire universe. He loves you unconditionally. And I'm telling people that. I'm speaking at men's conferences and all these different events. But when I get done, or, I talked to a guy that's contemplating suicide, and I'm telling him all this great stuff. But then I got home and I'm thinking, okay, if my own dad is telling me to kill myself, these kind of things, how could God actually love me? And so I spoke this a lot, but I realized one day that I was basically not practicing what I preached. As I'm telling people, God loves you. You're created in His image. I suck. Jesus would have died on the cross for just one of you. He would have died to save your sins. I'm thinking about, would He have died for me? I don't really know about that. So I read the Bible cover to cover, just really focusing on trying to help other people with this. but really had to look inside and go, like you guys said earlier, this is not my fault. This is not, I didn't deal with this. I wasn't put through this because I'm a bad person or because I wasn't a good son or whatever. So I think having that grief and allowing yourself to feel sad, to feel hurt, but then get over it and realize this wasn't my fault. This is something bad that happened, but become the better person that you kind of have to have that grief in order to deal with the struggle. For example, if you have a bad relationship, you're so sad, the love of your life took off, and you're looking at that. It's easy to feel like, oh, why am I so sad? What's wrong with me, kind of thing. But just let yourself process it, give yourself time, and then the most important thing is set a date. So if you're talking about a relationship, if you've got somebody that's talking to you going, I don't know if I'm ever going to get over this. It's the love of my life. I'm so sad, whatever. I don't know how long it's going to take to get over it. How about Tuesday?
How about Tuesday?
Focus on it, pick a date, and get over that grief. I think you have to have time to process it, but don't lay around and wallow in it for the rest of your life and make your life suck.
I think it's such a great point. Pick a date and say, I'm going to be sad for this long. And then when it's done, like, I'm going to let it go. Such a great insight. Thank you so much, Curtis, for being here. I appreciate you. Newswire Magazine, guys, go check it out. It is phenomenal. Just appreciate you. Thank you for all you do online and off. You're a great personal brand expert. So any other ways you want people to know about you before you sign off?
And so as a personal branding expert, if I am who I say I am, if I'm practicing what I preach, people will say, go to www.whatever.com / here's how you get a hold of me. Google me. If I don't show up on the first page of Google, the first 100 pages of Google, every search engine, if I'm not in all of your AI platforms, when you search personal branding expert, or if you search Curtis McCoy, Curtis McCoy, I probably don't know what I'm doing. So get on afterwards, Google Curtis McCoy, get connected with me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, wherever you want to connect, or also Newswire Magazine, news-wire.com.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Curtis. Appreciate you so much.
Appreciate those. Thanks.
You have a great rest of your day. We're going to come back here with everybody. Let's talk about grief. No, grief is such a broad topic. We have loss. There's so many different ways that we deal with grief. But when you think about grief in general, let's first go to Tani. What does this mean? Like, what's the tangible ways that you've been able to process grief? And then let us know, what are some tools you've been able to use to make sure that you can get to the other side of healing? Start there.
Well, as I said, by reading everyone's story, that they sent in and stuff, everybody has suffered grief. Yeah. And it was either through going to jail, it was either through, the loss of their mobility to move around, the loss of their childhood. I mean, there's all kinds of things. For me, the loss, it seemed like everywhere in my life there was a loss. And so when I was going through the recovery, I had come to the point of, okay, so I have to quit allowing that to affect me. Like Curtis says, you pick a date. Mine was going through the 12 steps. I went through 3 sets of books. And I'm like, okay, enough is enough, right? When am I going to start moving forward? And I had to move forward. But there's triggers. For me, there was triggers. Every time I would see something, I would get triggered about, well, we used to do this together, or, something with the kids or something like that. So then with that, I have to okay, so a memory, then I have to make myself a new memory. Or instead of going to the same old place, go to something new. And then if I get to a point where it doesn't bother me so much, then I can go back to the old, like car shows. For me, that was huge, but I couldn't go to them for a long, long time, or even NASCAR or the races, because that was something that the ex-husband and I used to love to go and enjoy together. But now I can go and do it. I went to my very first NASCAR, in Dallas, even before God put on me that I was going to move here. Mm-hmm. And it was phenomenal. It was my very first time, but it was uplifting. Those were my memories. That was something that I did. And I think that has a lot to do with grief too. I never had someone die in my family, except for my, like my grandparents. And that was a huge loss. That was, grieving. I've had friends and that type of stuff pass away. And so every one of them is different, but it's no different than the traumas in our life. It's what we do with them. And, I loved what Travis said too about, and Curtis, about everything. God uses everything. He takes all of those ashes and he makes beauty out of them.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Now, Krista, I know you have done a lot of neuro-linguistic programming, just like me. We kind of geek out on that stuff. What is a functional way that someone can reprogram a trigger? Because Tanya was saying, I go to NASCAR. I have all these things that come up with my previous husband. What are some simple ways that you can be like, you know what? This is something you can do to desensitize yourself to those negative triggers and give yourself another option. Go ahead, Krista. Oh, 1 second. You're on mute. And go ahead.
I think as a culture, we don't understand grief. I think we think we're victims to grief. And grief is not a singular emotion, and it's not a thing that overtakes us unless we allow it to be. Grief is a process, and it's a process of accepting and allowing that what is right now is right now.
Yeah.
It's an awareness that the world is what the world is. And in that, we have to shed the illusions. We have to shed our clinging, our wanting everything to be what it isn't. So oftentimes we're grieving the life we didn't get to have. We're grieving the rest of my relationship with this person that I lost. We're grieving that I didn't have the mother that I wanted to have. I didn't have the kind of childhood that I envisioned, right? So it's all about expectations and this, entitlement. There's a layer of entitlement that I deserve to have more. I deserve to have better. So we have to be present here now to begin to shed what I wanted and expected and feel like I deserved. So I think I'm even going to kind of bypass NLP for a moment, neuro-linguistic programming, and say the first thing you need to do to begin to accept and allow is presence and gratitude. It starts with an awareness of what do I have? What is here for me now? That it's not all bad. It's not all horrible. I didn't lose out on everything that should have been because this is what is here now. And then we'll go into a fun little neuro-linguistic program. Visualize yourself in the future. Visualize the you that you can become, that you want to become. And then you can stop dwelling on what you didn't or you won't. And you can focus on what you do, and you can.
Beautiful. That's such a simple thing, but guys, just because it's simple does not mean it's not extremely useful. I think sometimes we forget how our imaginations are made up. We get to choose things that we are thinking about, and all of the trauma triggers are just you using your imagination ineffectively, or I guess really effectively in a negative direction. You can alter the direction by the words you choose, by your physicality, and by the programs that you run. So thank you so much, Krista, for sharing that. I know TJ McGinnis, I always call you Travis, but TJ McGinnis, your author name, it's beautiful. Tell us your take on this. I want to know what grief means to you. How does this apply to your work, and how does this help all of our listeners heal through these conversations?
Oh, man. I think the point being made about expectations is so key, and understanding that can tether you to the endurance of the suffering, I guess, especially when it's tied up in identity. I think a lot of times that grief, especially when it really destroys how you've identified yourself, especially your self-value in things. This was my role. Whether it be husband, father, teacher, especially if your identity is tied up in vocation, a lot of these things, having that part of you shattered that you think gave you your self-worth can really disrupt and send into spirals and cycles that without help can be hard to get out of. Unfortunately, those are the times we usually withdraw, or we turn to other things to fill that void, which I just feel is love, where we want to experience that love and acceptance and self-worth. And so in my writing, particularly, well, I've got two different characters going two different directions, but they essentially go through the same things, just from a different angle. But kind of always finding, I know that cliche of finding rock bottom, I was at rock bottom, but I guess really that rock bottom is that moment where you have to make a decision about, well, I'm not this person. Who am I really? And then for me, surrendering to God and allowing him to define my identity and value, that I exist and I didn't cause myself to exist, and that I have the capacity to rationally think and choose to love. Kind of going back to what was said, my responsibility to then take, things happen to me, but it's my responsibility to react to them and decide what I want to do with them. So yeah, I think with grief, it's a lot of going to that deeper level of self and letting go, and realizing you actually have the power to begin anew, and to rise into something more beautiful, more tempered. I always like the crucible, illustration of like being refined, like the heat, not comfortable at all. But what comes out of it is something more pure, more durable, more true.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that example. I love that visual too, the crucible. As we go through this fire of affliction, what's left over is that pure essence of who we are. We're all children of God. We all have divine parentage. And when we stop thinking about what all the world is telling us we are and remember who we are, that divine identity is something that is a bedrock you can build your entire testimony on, you can build your healing on, because we are children of God. Now, in the last moment we have together, Dr. Randy, I wanted to give you a moment to share your experience with grief and why it is so essential to process that grief in a way that's healthy. Go ahead, Doctor. I really appreciate your insight.
One of the things that I've learned about grief is grief defined is what we no longer have or what we can no longer do. So what I have to do, and I'm reminded of this regularly, is I can't do this anymore, but what can I do? And how can I enjoy it? And grief is, it's something internal, and you've got to be able to make that internal change. And I make that decision. I don't allow others to make that decision for me. So, one of my favorite things to do is I've got a tractor down on a friend's farm. I can't go down there and get on it by myself, but my buddy says, get down here and I'll get you up on it and go out and have some fun. So I do. I look at what can I now do? And so I have to look around at those that I'm with, and how can I make the best out of this and still bring joy and everything to myself, to my friends, and more importantly, how can I do this for the glory of God?
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. All of you have such wonderful stories. You definitely want to get healed to be healed, guys. This is something that I'm super passionate about. You can tell the next couple of weeks, we're going to have a lot of people talking about this from different perspectives, all different walks of life. The biggest reason why I'm doing this is I want to make sure that I can be a positive voice for good. I want to help you be able to find resources that will help you be inspired, uplifted, and be able to take your step towards your potential. Because my biggest mission is I want to see you achieve your potential. What do you want to achieve out of life? Now, if you want more confidence, you want to improve your life, it comes down to making sure you make the right choices for you. What is the thing that you want? And then identify it. What's that core desire, that true passion? If you really want to heal, there are resources out there. There are people. I might not be the source for you, but I am happy to point you to those resources that will help you, because I'm a people connector, and I want to make sure that you have every opportunity possible to heal. And I want to thank everyone for being on today one more time. Tawny, you did such a great job. And Randy, thank you so much for your insights as well. Krista, we had M. Curtis McCoy, we had Travis or TJ McGinnis. What a wonderful experience for all of us to hear from you. Come back again for more. We'll have another one of these healing conversations, not next week, but the week after. And as always, keep leveling up your life. I hope that today you find a time to really identify what you want out of life and figure out, you know what, how do I get 1% better at that? And then you go that final percent in your life so that you can make a massive shift. It all starts with those incremental changes. So thanks again, guys, for being on today. And I appreciate you. You guys have a wonderful rest of your day. God bless. See ya.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.